How you doing, everybody? This is Let's Be Real, Brad, and today I'm going to be talking about my official Marvel Cinematic Universe movie ranking. This was a list I took probably a few hours on trying to decipher all the movies together because there's so many films and there's so many ones that I love so much, but I think I need to put them all in this big, ginormous list. Marvel films are the most popular and ginormous films of all time. I absolutely love the Marvel franchise, as I have this Marvel shirt, I made the comic books, the movies, and I just grew up watching it. But I won't consider myself a complete Marvel fanboy. I will say to myself, yeah, I love Marvel and it's one of my favorites, but if someone doesn't like it, I'm not going to be too upset over it. I'm not going to go extremely crazy and think Marvel movies are the best ever. Because let's be honest, just because you love something doesn't mean it's the best. So I'm going to go and say that the Marvel movies are good and they're fun. But let's not go on a craze here and think that all of them are 10 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s. Let's not go crazy in here. There are a few that have those ratings, but we're not going to say that every film is just so fantastic because I'm going to be real with you guys about that. Out of the way, we're going at number 23, Thor: The Dark World. What am I even supposed to say about this film? This movie's boring. It is so unbelievably bad. The fact that they use this in Avengers Endgame is so bizarre and it's such a weird choice because no one likes that movie. Barely everyone's seen that movie. And it's so beyond forgettable that it honestly does hurt Endgame a little bit going back to this film because you're supposed to remember it. And that is such a bad film that putting in this one, I thought it was just kind of a waste. And I did not really like that in Endgame. Ended up having some of the worst parts of that film. I don't even remember, is there elves? That's what it was. There was elves in this film. Thor has these weird relationship with Natalie Portman that doesn't go anywhere because they completely waste her character. Yeah, this movie is just a piece of crap. Let's move on. Number 22 is the first Thor film. Again, I just don't really like these first two Thor films. I thought they were kind of bland, boring, with just terrible script, really boring cinematography, and just nothing that really makes it stand out. Sure, you have some decent fight scenes here and there. Overall, I find the story just completely useless for the most part, and that's what this first Thor film is. It feels like it's just a setup waiting for the Avengers because they know what they're doing. They know they're setting up for the next Avengers film. I will probably never watch it again. Number 21 on this list is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp just feels so forgettable. It feels like a side episode in this Marvel franchise. After Infinity War being so insane and having one of the best endings that I have seen in a film that works so well and it caught everybody off guard. The fact that they try to do this small little episode feels just so less, and it feels like it should have just been before Infinity War, so we can have Infinity War straight to Endgame, and then everything else can be its own films. But of course, Marvel has to shove everything in there. They want to say, hey, where was Ant-Man this whole entire time? Oh, Wasp is going to be in this movie too. That's cool. The story doesn't really feel like it really matters and has any true stakes throughout the film. They try to be too jokey and throw in so many jokes that were funny the first time, but the next two times I watched it were just not that funny and just kind of boring. I enjoy Ant-Man as a character, and I think Paul Rudd is pretty good as Ant-Man, and that's why this film isn't all awful, but it just feels like you just need to watch post-credits, and that's about it. Number 20 on this list is The Incredible Hulk. Now, this is a pretty low on this list, and I had a little bit higher before, but I think because this film just doesn't age as so well. Edward Norton is very good in a role, but the problem is the script is so bad, and it has this forced relationship that's thrown into the film, and it's expecting you to remember all the comics and all the things you've watched about the Hulk with this relationship, that it doesn't work. Of course, someone like me is going to know all about it, but trying to think of as this is a brand new characters that they're showing us, and they're showing their version of the film, they introduce it with this background to this relationship that there was something there before, and they try to bring it all back, and it just doesn't work at all. They have just okay fight scenes, but toward the end of the film, it kind of feels like it doesn't really matter, and you know nothing is really bad that's going to happen to the Hulk throughout the film. The film is a little bit higher than the others on this list just because there are moments I really do enjoy throughout the film, and I thought the first, I'd say 15 minutes are pretty good, and I really like the setup to it, and then once we get to Betty, the whole movie just becomes a mess. Number 19 is Captain Marvel. I've seen this film 4 times. 4 times. How did I see this film 4 times? I couldn't tell you. This movie is just so boring and bland, and it doesn't even matter. They try to make Captain Marvel this most powerful Avenger that she's going to be, and that's fine. I think Captain Marvel is cool, but not in this film. The writing of her character is so weak and so wooden. Brie Larson is trying her best, but I think her wooden performance just does not work in this film. I think it's possibly because of the direction that maybe she's given this character, and the awful script just doesn't help out giving Brie Larson any good lines for her to do. Character is very weak throughout the whole film, and she's just so beyond powerful that her character is just not that interesting. Oh, you're just so powerful and you can destroy things. You have no weakness. Nothing can beat you at all. That's not a really interesting character. She is so powerful. She just destroys everything the whole entire time. How does that make you an interesting character? No, it doesn't at all. And I'm not even going to try to debate you on that because it doesn't. I think if she was in a different film with different writers, I think it could be a better character. But even forcing her into Avengers Endgame, it doesn't work at all. And I hated how they used her in that film because they just made this film to make $1 billion because they knew that she might be in Avengers Endgame. And then she has a whole big scene in there and just feels kind of forced as we don't even know this character at all. And it doesn't even work with the original Avengers. Sorry, I had a rant because I really don't like this movie at all. Number 18 on this list is Captain America: The First Avenger. This is a film that I watched all the time as a kid. Is I really love The First Avenger. But the problem is it just feels like a setup film. It feels like they're just going through the motions and trying to set up Captain America's journeys in New York in 2012 so we can get the Avengers Initiative. I don't really feel as though there's stakes in the film, as you always know he's going to get out of every situation. And this is what they corrected in The Winter Soldier that was directed by the Russo brothers, that actually felt like some things were actually going to be at stakes, and maybe Cap won't die, but something bad's going to happen to him or where he's a part of. It's just run by the numbers film, has some fun moments here and there with some good action scenes, and Chris Evans is great and really bulked up for the role. Gotta say, it's not a good movie, but it's not worse than any of these films on the list. Number 17 is the first Ant-Man film. I really enjoy Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. I think he does a really good job. As I said earlier, I like the cool visual and creative choices of presentation throughout the use of film, even though parts of it have really boring script and some funny jokes mixed in with it, bland and boring cinematography. I really wish Edgar Wright directed this film as he was supposed to. It would have been excellent, and it probably would have been Marvel's best film, if we're going to be honest here. Ending has a really standard and boring bad guy that dresses just like Ant-Man and is a counterpart, and it is a fun scene, but there's no emotional weight to it, so you almost really don't care what's gonna happen throughout that scene. Overall, I like Ant-Man. I don't think it's all that bad. I gotta say, it's a film that I don't think I'm going to be planning on rewatching anytime soon. Number 16 on this list is Iron Man 2. This film does get a lot of hate, and it's totally understandable. There's a lot of subplots going on. Sometimes it can be very messy, but I do enjoy Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, and now you got Don Cheadle, who is playing War Machine in this film. I love the chemistry that they have in the film. Bad guy Whiplash, is that his name? I was totally missed and wasted opportunity, especially when you have Mickey Rourke in the role as the villain, and it should have turned out great, and it was just a massive misfire. The introduction to Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, which I thought was a nice added choice. Overall, I actually like Iron Man 2. I thought there was some really great and emotional parts in the film, especially between Iron Man and War Machine as their characters have a little bit of a fight that happens in the middle of the film. As you know, they're going to come back together, but I thought it was just done well in those scenes. Number 15, Avengers: Age of Ultron. This was a film that everyone loved my sophomore year, and I get we were sophomores, so I can understand. And everyone was saying it was better than the first Avengers film, and at the time, I just didn't even think that. Over time, this movie has not aged at all. Ultron is just a terrible, dumb villain that just has the same motivations as any other villain, and he is way cooler in the comics. So I'm trying to not base it off that, but when your character is changed from the comics, which is fine, I don't care, but then when he's just a boring, bland villain we've already seen before, that really ruins the potential this character already has. There's a lot of great, awesome action scenes, as I think some of them are better than the first film. The biggest issue with the whole film is that it's just so messy with setting up different subplots for other characters to go throughout the next couple phases, and it just doesn't feel like a complete story moving forward. There's too many things going on, and it doesn't feel focused on what is actually happening. You have the whole Thor Ragnarok subplot that's going on, and then Hulk leaves to go do his own thing, but he has his relationship with Black Widow that really makes no sense. There's just too much going on, and I just don't really enjoy this film all that much. I can't say it's a bad film, but it is very overrated. Number 14 is going to be the biggest hot take on here, and that is Black Panther. I enjoy Black Panther. I have the 4K. I enjoy the movie, but I just like the movie because I'm pretty split because there are really great things throughout the film with Chadwick Boseman playing as T'Challa, and now you have Michael B. Jordan playing as Killmonger, and they have a really nice dynamic. Killmonger is one of the best MCU villains, and he does a really awesome job being as a more relatable and emotional villain that is understandable, and we can honestly see where he comes from even if we don't agree with him. Some really cool action shots with a pretty great soundtrack that I do enjoy. Parts of the cinematography are enjoyable, but there are often times in the film where it feels just like the other Marvel bland cinematography that they use all the time, so that all the movies can look exactly the same. But there are parts in the film, like the third act, that are just so bad, and it's so messy with just sloppy CGI everywhere, especially when Killmonger dresses up as this golden Black Panther, and it just looks like a big CGI mess when they're fighting in this little train station down below. The story's okay. I mean, it's something we've obviously seen before, but it's fine. I'll watch it again, but it's highly overrated. Number 13 is Iron Man 3. Who would have thought Iron Man 3 would have been over Black Panther? Because it seems like everyone hates Iron Man 3. I can understand where the hate comes from. The marketing made it as such a big, huge movie, especially with the Mandarin. The Mandarin is one of Iron Man's biggest villains, and having Ben Kingsley in the role, of course you're going to be excited. The trailers looked awesome, but when the film becomes more of a Tony Stark film rather than an Iron Man big budget action film, I can understand where people would be upset. Sure, you get some Iron Man moments, but Iron Man is hardly in the film at all. What works for me is because we get a lot more Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, and it's more of this emotional journey that Tony Stark has. He's just down in the gutter. Everyone also doesn't like the Mandarin twist, that he was just an actor. I thought it was a nice, funny twist that they did with the film. Of course, you want to see the traditional Mandarin, and the filmmakers have said that they are eventually going to have the real, true Mandarin in the films. So, okay, you got what you asked for, Marvel fans. Be quiet, okay? I thought this film was just really enjoyable, and I think they did things better than a lot of Marvel films. Number 12 on this list is Doctor Strange. I truly love Doctor Strange so much. I love the mind-bending, twisting aspect of the film, that there's so many great moments of creativity and with just great CGI moments. Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, is the perfect person to play Doctor Strange, and you have Benedict Wong in the film as well. It's just a great origin story that we hadn't had in a while, and I thought it was just really, really good. Scott Derrickson did a fantastic job doing this film, as he's done a lot of horror films in the past, but transitions to a big budget Marvel film, and I thought he did a really excellent job with the film. Of course, it's not the best thing ever, and it has the typical Marvel cliches and tropes and some of the issues of how the other Marvel films, but I still think is a good movie overall. Spider-Man Far From Home is just that one film that I really do enjoy, but I don't think it's the best Marvel film. I know some of my friends really love Far From Home, but I'm sorry, I just don't think it's that good. Jake Gyllenhaal is just awesome as the villain in this film, as he just does an awesome job with the role. I really want to see more Jake Gyllenhaal because he kills it as Mysterio. The beginning of the film has the typical going through the motions, setting everything up, and sometimes being a little repetitive, and I get it. It's enjoyable, it has that teen aspect, and I like how they mention the after effects of Endgame and how that affects the real world, especially with the students. There's some really awesome and explosive action scenes that are just done super well. Tom Holland is just great as Spider-Man. Second half is when the movie gets so much better, especially when all the Mysterio manipulation, mind control scenes that really make the movie so good, and I wish we just got a lot more of that. I mean, it's just fine. It's just a good movie. A 6 out of 10 is a good movie. Now we're in the top 10, and here comes Iron Man, the first to start it all. Robert Downey Jr. is excellent as Tony Stark. It's a great origin story that feels like it's not just a setup, like we're actually getting more of a Tony Stark film, because Iron Man himself isn't necessarily in it a whole lot as when I rewatched it. Villain in this film is overall kind of bland and boring and just wants to take over the world and has the Iron Man suit, and he fights him at the end, which is a pretty cool fight, I'll admit. It's just a film that really took off and shaped the tone of the MCU films, and when you watch it now, it feels so much different of how the MCU films are toned now. But I think it was just so cool that we got something different, and that was one of the best superhero films around that time, because there was just point where Marvel films just weren't it after the big letdown of Spider-Man 3 and X-Men The Last Stand. Number 9 on this list is Thor Ragnarok. I take this film as more of a comedy because this film is a comedy. If you know Taika Waititi, he is known for being a comedy director for the most part. What We Do in the Shadows, Hunt for the Wilder People. Those are more comedy films with a subgenre of even being a horror or being just an adventure film. That's why I really enjoy Taika's direction with the film. I love that they changed Thor's character and they made him so much more interesting, hilarious, and I thought his change was overall really worked with what the film's going on. This is due to Chris Hemsworth just being a funny actor, and I think this film really showed how funny Chris Hemsworth can be. Valkyrie is just super awesome side character. I can't wait to get more of her in the film. Tessa Thompson is just a great upcoming actress that is gonna steal it in the next couple films that she's going to be in. Overall, I love the tone, I love the style, and I love the color that surrounds this film, as it knows how silly it is, but it just works almost all the time. I really enjoy Helena as a Marvel villain. I think she's solid. She's not the best thing ever, obviously, but I think she's enjoyable and works so well with the other characters on screen. I can understand the hate that this film gets, or it's too funny, there's too many jokes, but you gotta understand, what this film is going for, I think, is different than a lot of the other Marvel bland films that try to be too jokey all the time, and it messes with the tone. That's the biggest problem I have with a lot of the Marvel films. The movie doesn't try to really be serious all that much, so I gotta give it a lot of credit that it's sticking to it, and it knows what it wants to be, and it has an awesome and enjoyable time, and I really enjoy Thor Ragnarok. Number 8 on this list is gonna be another controversial opinion, Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame is a good film, okay? I enjoy Avengers Endgame. I got it on 4K when it came out. I did the MCU marathon, okay? I enjoy Endgame. The problem is, it's not as good as Infinity War. Also, it does have a lot of issues on the film. There's a lot going on. The time travel, I enjoy, but it doesn't follow its own rules that it sets, because time travel isn't a real thing, right? But when you're not following your own rules that you set, that's a big problem. As long as you follow what you're doing, I don't care. But then it changes what it does throughout the film for its plot convenience, and I thought that was just really annoying. Everyone loves that big action battle scene, which is some of the greatest I've ever seen in cinema. Absolutely fantastic. That is the moment that I would want to experience all over again in a movie theater, even though I've seen the film like 3 times in the theater. Wraps up Captain America and Iron Man and Black Widow's journey also well. Even though people don't like the Black Widow's journey, I think it worked well for this film, and it kind of worked for a character as well, but that's a whole other section. This movie is very long, and sometimes in the film there's a lot of pacing issues, and they could have sped up a lot of these moments. I think that some of it could have been kept down. Overall, I really do enjoy this film, but the stakes aren't there as Infinity War, as this is just a big fan service, referential, fun movie that is made for the MCU fans, and I can say I love it. I do love it, okay? If I had a personal list, Endgame's going to be up there. But if we're talking about objectively, Endgame is going to be much farther down in the list. I'm sorry, but you can love something and be critique about it. It's not hard, guys. Number 7 on this list is Spider-Man Homecoming. I really enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming so much because it feels like just a coming-of-age story with Peter Parker. I love how we don't get the same Uncle Ben died origin story we've already got twice, and I'm just kind of sick of it. But what I love is that it just opens us into the Spider-Man world, and we already introduced to so many characters all at once, but it does it in such a nice way where it doesn't stuff you with all this exposition all in your face. You learn about where Peter Parker's status is in high school. You learn how his relationship is with his aunt and what he does on the daily basis of trying to be Spider-Man. Michael Keaton is awesome as Vulture in the movie, and he's a really good MCU villain that I really enjoy. The fight scenes are great as well, and it has a lot of style to it. I think the script is really good as well. I think the film is just so well realized, and it's just more focused than a lot of the other MCU films. We've already introduced Spider-Man. We've already set him up in Civil War, so now we can just get his own film. He doesn't have to set up anything else within the series, and I think that's why I really enjoy it, because it feels like it's just his own thing. If you haven't seen Spider-Man Homecoming, please watch, because Tom Holland is excellent, and I think he is the best comic book representation of Spider-Man. He may not be your favorite Spider-Man, but to me, of the comics that I've personally read of Spider-Man, I think he's the best comic book representation of him. Tobey Maguire is just going to be my favorite just because I like that silly, cheesy tone that the film has, and I grew up with it, and I think the first two films are great, and they're just part of my childhood. But Tom Holland does an awesome job. Number 6 on this list is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy 2 so much. I love that it has so much style, so much passion, and it has an overall great characters and a great script. The story is really fun as well, as Kurt Russell is in the film, being Star-Lord's dad, and I thought that was a nice, interesting element with a really great twist towards the end of the film that you may see coming, you may not. I didn't necessarily see it when I first saw the film. Cinematography is excellent. I love the music choices, as both soundtracks from both films are just the best of the MCU. I think James Gunn wants his own style for his movies, and they don't feel like they're part of the universe. You could watch these two films and not watch any of the MCU films, and you won't be confused for a second. And I think that's what I love most about these films. They feel like their own sci-fi adventures. I totally even forget they're just a Marvel film because they don't reference all these other characters from all the other movies. They're always in space with a bunch of cool different planets with a really cool production design. I really enjoy this band of misfit characters that really does well. There are things in this film I think does better than the first film, but the first film does better than this film, as I do think Guardians 1 is the better film, but this film is right up there. And this film, I think, is severely underrated by many fans, as I think people need to give this film another shot because it is awesome. We are now in the top 5. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. The Russo brothers took the Winter Soldier and they made Captain America around this born Stanford patriotism Captain America and made him more of a complex and diluted character that actually has a lot more complexity to him than what we have seen of him before. I like how the film changes everything in the MCU. Russo brothers like, yeah, you like S.H.I.E.L.D.? Yeah, well, they're just a Hydra and they're taking over everybody. So get rid of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I like how it's just, it's different than we've seen in most films. The action scenes are some of the best of the MCU films, as they're so well shot. They're always extremely so entertaining. I love how it just feels like there's so many stakes every time throughout the film that something bad is going to happen. The tone is just a lot darker. Even though there's some jokes here and there, I think the tone is much more serious and it works with the story that it's presenting. I think if this film was too jokey and too cheesy, it wouldn't work. Of course, there are some of those moments in the film, and that's why it's not going to be one of the best films ever, but I think it really changes the MCU, especially with its tone being a little bit darker, and we see some of the later films have that little bit of a darkness to them, and that could be just due to the Russo brothers. Number 4 on this list is Captain America Civil War. If we're going to do personal favorites on this list, Civil War is definitely going to be up there. As a film, it's not better than these other films on this list. And I think the reason why is because the third act is a little messy, and there's a lot of things that they introduce that sometimes don't make sense or they're not well developed. So that's what's going to bring it down here. But I'm not going to say the film's bad at all. I think it is an awesome and excellent film. Talk about having sides of Captain America and Iron Man. Who's going to be with the government, or should they choose to govern themselves? And you have these teams that are going against each other, especially in that amazing airport scene that is one of my favorites. I probably watched on YouTube like 20 times, so don't judge me because I really like Marvel. Ching. But I feel like in the third act, it gets a little messy, but there's an awesome fight scene between Captain America, Bucky, and Iron Man, and that's when the film gets real serious, and it is my favorite fight of the MCU. I had no idea what was going to happen when I first saw this. I was like, wow, is Iron Man going to die? Is Captain America going to die? And of course, they don't kill them off, but you feel like it's actually going to happen, because in the other films, you're like, oh, they're just going to be alive. And you're like, what? Well, since the Russo brothers did some crazy stuff in Winter Soldier, I can't imagine them not doing crazy stuff in this movie. I like how they took the comic book adaptation of Civil War and they just did their own thing with it. I'm totally cool with that. Basically an Avengers 2.5, so maybe it works with that. I mean, it doesn't have a good amount of characters, but I always feel like it's focused on our couple main characters out the film, and everyone's just kind of side pieces, which is totally okay for a film like this. Number 3 is the first Avengers. I love the Avengers so much. The fact this is the first time we've gotten this big team of superheroes all together to fight this one bad guy, and they all gotta bring themselves together, is just awesome. It was the first time we've ever seen anything like this. I'm surprised that Justice League didn't beat the Avengers to it. I love that how the other Marvel origin stories kind of took some hits because they're origin stories, except for Iron Man. But it works so well because now we don't really need a character introduction. We don't need everyone's backgrounds. We already know it, and we can just go ahead and have an awesome movie. Everyone has an amazing chemistry on screen. It has these cheesy, hilarious, awesome moments that it doesn't take itself too seriously at times, and I think that works perfectly with this kind of film. I mean, there's a bunch of aliens, this big green monster guy, there's a god, there's a guy that dresses up in a red, white, and blue American outfit. I mean, come on. If the film was going to get any serious, I don't think it would have worked. Loki is an awesome villain played by Tom Hiddleston, and I just love so many moments from there. It's so memorable, and I think this film doesn't get the credit that it deserves now because we've gotten so many other great Marvel films. I think we forget that this film just works so well, and it's so focused throughout that it's just so straightforward without trying to set up anything because it was already set up to this point. Number 2 on this list is Guardians of the Galaxy. Like I said, all the things I said before about Guardians 2, just remember I said that for this one because I don't want to say everything over and over again. But what I love about this film, again, is just the characters that are just made so well. It is extremely well written, has some of the best jokes of the MCU, and it feels like James Gunn had his hand all over it, and Marvel Studios kind of let him do what he wanted with the story and how he wanted to present it. Ronan the Accuser is a pretty bad villain and pretty forgettable, and he is a very weak aspect of the film. I gotta say, everyone's charismatic performances. This is one of the best Marvel films because you don't have to watch it like all the other Marvel films to make sure you're caught up with it, like I said in Guardians 2. I think it's better structured and it flows much better. Now, number 1. This is the best Marvel film. This was the easiest one I had on this list, and I will defend this film. I think it is the best one. Avengers Infinity War. What I love is it takes everything we've ever seen in all these films, throws it all together, and we have this big, massive film that has one of the best twist endings ever. Thanos is a villain we've been teasing throughout all these MCU films, with some of the films having post-credit scenes, starting from the first Avengers film. I love that he is so menacing. He's so well realized as he just wants world domination, but it's in a different way that I haven't seen in most films. Josh Brolin is excellent as Thanos, and it makes for some of the best conflicted and exciting moments in the whole franchise. I love how it's just structured so much better in Endgame because we have characters in one area, and that's where it can lead to some issues where you're going to be focused on some characters for too long or too short, as like you go all the way back to the first group and you're like, oh, I totally forgot what was happening with you guys. But the fact that they took literally almost 60 characters that we all know and threw them on here and made it work and feel balanced and actually feel like everyone gets enough screen time to do stuff, I gotta say, I don't think anybody can do that besides the Russo brothers. I think they were the perfect choice to handle just this monster of a film. And the fact that we're getting so many characters who have never talked to each other and never interacted, and they have such amazing chemistry on screen, and the fact that the Russo brothers didn't even write almost all these characters, and they wrote these characters so well to the point where it actually feels like they're true characters from the other films, is extremely difficult. Because to remind you, the Russo brothers were only doing the Captain America films. I love the cinematography, I love the score, the editing is great, and it's well paced throughout, as the movie is just really, really fast. And by the time you get to the ending battle, you're like, oh man, we're already here. And the battle's so long, and it's so well deserving for us fans that I can't see that this film can't get the massive love that it gets. I think it's so focused, and it has that Return of the King vibe where it's just so exciting, and we're getting ready this ready, big, massive movie that everything is going to go down, and no more references, no more silliness, as the movie does have some of the best jokes and some really silly moments. But when it comes down to it, I think the tone meshes much better in this film than a lot of the other films. So this is my list of the 23 MCU films ranked so far. I hope you guys really enjoy it. Let me know down below what is your rankings of the Marvel films, or what are ones that you disagree with. I know people are going to disagree with me on this list, and that is totally okay because we think differently about these Marvel films. Again, I do enjoy the Marvel films. I don't hate them, but I have to be objective about things that I truly do love. Please like and share the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I thank you guys so much for requesting this video, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. Just have a lot to say about it because I made this for you guys, and I was kind of skeptical about doing it, but you guys deserve it, and you guys are what makes this channel what it is. If you like this video, I'll see you guys in the next one.